For 3 years, an elderly veteran named Walter Green came to the cafe every day, where he silently ate breakfast at the same table. The only person who cared about him was the waitress Emily, a widow with 2 children. When Walter suddenly stopped coming, Emily's life began to fall apart. Problems with money, her son's health, and the threat of losing her home. But soon the sailors came to the cafe and announced that Walter had died, bequeathing all his savings to Emily, a woman who once simply treated him like a human being. His act changed her fate, and Walter's table became a symbol of memory and quiet gratitude. For 3 years, without fail, Walter Green arrived at the Maplewood Diner at exactly 6 a.m. Rain, snow, blistering heat, it didn't matter. Booth 3 was his, a seat with its back to the wall, near the corner window that overlooked Main Street. Locals learned to avoid it. Even the newest waitresses were briefed. That's Walter's booth. Don't ask questions. Just pour the coffee. Walter was in his early 70s, tall but shrinking, shoulders square but tight with pain. He wore the same forest green windbreaker every day, even in summer. His hair was gray, kept military short, and his eyes, they were the kind of eyes that didn't look at things, they measured them. He always ordered eggs over easy wheat toast and black coffee. He never lingered. Just ate, drank, paid his $13.50 bill in exact change, and left a $5 tip folded under the napkin. Most thought he was strange. The busboys called him the statue. The manager thought he might be off. But Emily Dawson saw something different. Emily worked the morning shift. She was 35, widowed, and doing her best to keep her 2 kids fed. Her husband, Mark, had been a firefighter, killed in the line of duty during a building collapse. Since then, Emily had taken every shift offered. Mornings at the diner, nights scrubbing offices, sometimes both. She never complained, because complaining wasted time. It was Emily who learned the pattern of Walter's breathing, the way his left hand trembled just slightly when he reached for his mug. She never asked about it. She just made sure the mug was never empty. Walter never spoke. But Emily always said, "See you tomorrow, sir," every single morning. And over time, she began to sense something just barely in the way he looked at her. Not gratitude, not affection, just a flicker of recognition. A soldier scanning a war-torn map and finding one familiar landmark. Emily didn't know why she did it, but she always made sure Booth 3 was clean before he arrived. She never asked for thanks. She just kept going, like, "Walter," because sometimes, when your life feels like it's falling apart, routine is the only thing you can hold on to. And that's what they gave each other, without saying a word. Routine. And something even rarer, respect. Monday morning. Booth 3 sat empty. Emily looked at the door twice before she even clocked in. Then at 6:10, she checked again. She laughed it off to herself. Maybe he overslept. Maybe the cold got to his joints. By 6:30, she wasn't laughing. He'd never been late. Not once. By 6:45, her hands trembled as she poured a cup of coffee that would never be drunk. Booth 3 stayed empty, and it felt wrong, like a missing tooth, the kind of absence that aches. Tuesday came. Walter still didn't show. But something else did, a problem with payroll. When Emily opened her banking app during her 10-minute break, her account blinked a message that made her stomach drop. Payment returned, insufficient funds. By noon, the owner was pacing behind the counter, rubbing his temples. He finally confessed what the staff had feared. The diner's books were bleeding. With costs rising and fewer regulars coming in, cuts were coming, schedules reduced, possibly layoffs. Emily didn't ask what that meant for her. She knew. Wednesday, her phone rang while she was wiping down the counter. It was the school nurse. "Mrs. Dawson, your son collapsed in gym. Asthma attack. We administered the school's backup inhaler, but you'll need to pick him up and get him a refill today." Her heart dropped. The new prescription cost double what it used to, and she didn't have it. Not even close. That night, she pawned her wedding ring. It had been Mark's idea, the ring with the firehouse emblem carved into the band. She took it off with shaking fingers and handed it over with barely a word. The clerk didn't ask questions. She left with $120 and a plastic bag full of small bills and quarters. She sat in her car and counted them, her tears mixing with the sound of windshield wipers scraping over a dry windshield. The pain was silent, but it roared. Thursday morning, she couldn't stop herself. She wiped down booth 3, set out the mug, napkin, cutlery. She stood there a moment too long before catching herself. Stupid. He's not coming. She turned away before her co-workers could see the wetness in her eyes. That afternoon, she got the letter. Mortgage assistance denied. Her name in block print beside a date. 30 days to vacate. The house Mark died trying to build. The home where her daughter took her first steps. Where her son's artwork covered the fridge, gone. She stared at the paper, then at her children sleeping on the couch, unaware that the floor beneath them was already gone. Friday came with rain. The diner was half empty. Gray clouds pressed against the windows like fists trying to break in. Emily moved through the shift like a ghost. She dropped a glass. Apologized. Didn't cry. She scrubbed booth 3 like she always did. But today, her hands shook with frustration, with rage at a world that just kept taking and taking. As she moved to the next table, headlights swept the diner. A sleek black SUV rolled into the parking lot, the kind with no license plate numbers, just small government emblems on the corners. She stopped mid-wipe. The SUV door opened. Then another. 6 uniformed men stepped into the rain. They moved with precision, purpose, boots hitting pavement in unison. The diner went silent, except for the storm hammering the glass. Emily stood frozen, rag in hand, heart thudding. The lead man stepped inside, scanned the room with a soldier's eyes, then walked straight to her. "Are you Emily Dawson?" She nodded slowly, barely able to speak. "I'm Commander James Whitaker, United States Navy. We're here on behalf of Captain Walter Green." The name hit like a strike to the chest. Commander Whitaker removed his hat, rainwater running off the brim. "I'm sorry to tell you, he passed away Monday morning, peacefully, in his sleep." Emily swayed. Walter was military? Whitaker nodded. Highly decorated. Navy SEAL. 3 bronze stars. 1 silver. Quietest man in the room, but the loudest in action. She blinked through shock. "I didn't know. You treated him with dignity, when others didn't." He stepped aside, revealing another sailor holding a flag-draped wooden box. Emily's legs went weak. Inside, that box was more than medals and ribbons. It held the storm that was coming, the one that would wipe away everything she thought she knew about the man in booth 3, and about herself. The box was heavier than it looked. Emily stood at the center of the diner, surrounded by silence and the scent of coffee and rain, as 6 Navy men watched her cradle a stranger's legacy. Walter Green, silent, stone-faced Walter, was gone. And somehow, this box, draped in the American flag, was meant for her. Commander Whitaker spoke with the voice of someone who had delivered this kind of news before, but never quite like this. "He left this in our care," he said, placing a sealed envelope on top of the box. "Said it was for the woman who saw me." Emily looked down at the handwriting. Block letters, sharp and deliberate. "To Emily Dawson, who saw me." Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter inside was 3 pages long, written in pen, the edges wrinkled as if he'd handled it many times before mailing it. It began simply, "I was not meant to last this long." The words that followed peeled open a life Emily had never glimpsed. Walter wrote of the wars he survived. Of men he didn't. He confessed the thoughts no one wants to admit. About the ghosts that walked behind him, never letting him sleep. About a home that grew too quiet after his wife passed. About living alone, eating alone, sitting alone, every single day. For a long time, I woke up each morning hoping I wouldn't wake up the next. Emily had to sit down. "I came to the diner because it gave me structure. You gave me consistency. You gave me humanity, not with speeches, not with pity, but with a cup of coffee and the words, 'See you tomorrow, sir.' You said it like it mattered, like I mattered." Her vision blurred. She could feel the weight of every moment she'd ever doubted her worth, ever felt like her work was invisible. Walter had been watching, closer than she knew. I didn't have a family left, but I had a mission, one last mission, to make sure the only person who showed me warmth didn't get left out in the cold. In the box was a manila envelope. Inside, a check. Emily blinked at the number. It didn't make sense at first. She counted zeros like someone trying to decode a foreign language. $327,000. The Navy pension, his savings, his investments. All of it to her. The tears came without sound, rolling down her cheeks as her breath caught in her throat. She looked back at the SEALs, all of whom stood still, their eyes solemn but full of something else. Respect. Whitaker nodded once. Walter asked that we ensure you were taken care of. His words, not ours. She tried to speak, but the words tangled. I didn't do anything special. You did more than you know, the commander said. You didn't treat him like a ghost. The diner remained hushed. A few regulars were still seated, silent witnesses to this surreal moment. One of them, Mr. Albright, a grizzled Vietnam vet who'd eaten in silence for years, quietly removed his cap and set on the counter. The other sailors took the box back with them, saying it would be officially interred with Walter's personal effects at Arlington, unless she wanted to keep it. I'd like to display it here, she whispered. Booth 3, it was his. Whitaker smiled. Then it's yours. The next morning, Emily returned early. She set Booth 3, just as she always had. Then she framed the photo Walter had included in the box, a grainy, quiet image of her pouring him coffee, and placed it upright beside the condiments. Beneath it, she laid his medal and handkerchief under the glass. A new plaque sat beside them. He sat here and asked for nothing but kindness. By noon, word had spread. Veterans from across the county began trickling in. One left an American flag pin beside the napkin dispenser. Another, a mother, left a photo of her brother in uniform, folded into a corner of the tabletop. A young man in a Navy hoodie came in, ordered only coffee, and quietly left $13.50 folded exactly how Walter used to. Emily didn't know what to do with all of it, but somehow her hands did, clearing plates, topping off mugs, smiling gently at the strangers who suddenly felt like family. And that evening, after her shift, she sat in Booth 3 alone. She placed both hands on the table, closed her eyes, and whispered the words that started it all. See you tomorrow, sir. Saturday morning. The Maplewood Diner opened at 6 sharp. By 6:05, Booth 3 was already occupied, not by Walter, but by his memory, shining brighter than ever. Emily had polished the glass, so clean you could see her reflection in it. Beneath it, Walter's medal gleamed beside the photo of her pouring his coffee, and the words on the plaque held the weight of silence. But that morning, the silence didn't last. By 6:10, a steady stream of people, veterans, EMTs, nurses, a group of young cadets from the local ROTC, began to arrive. By 6:20, the place was packed. By 6:30, local reporters were outside, cameras ready, try to understand why a modest roadside diner had a line stretching down the block in the pouring rain. And at 6:45, something unprecedented happened. A convoy of 5 government vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Not showy, just black, efficient, and moving with purpose. 2 local officers stepped out first, clearing the path. Then came Rear Admiral Samuel Corday, U.S. Navy, in full dress uniform. Emily, who just finished serving coffee to a Vietnam vet and his teenage grandson, looked up, brow furrowing. Her apron was damp, her hand shaking slightly, and her heart, she couldn't explain the weight pressing in. Admiral Corday walked in with 4 aides. The diner hushed again. "Miss Dawson?" he asked, loud enough to be heard without commanding the room. She wiped her hands on her apron, nodded once. "Yes, sir." He removed his cap. Permission to sit at Booth 3. The world tilted for a moment. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Of course." He walked to the table, stood still for a moment, then touched the back of the chair like it meant something more. He faced the room. "This man," he said, gesturing to Walter's photo, "was my teammate, my commanding officer, and my friend." A beat of silence fell. Every word next hit like a heartbeat. Captain Walter Green commanded Joint Special Operations missions across 3 continents. He pulled men from collapsed buildings, carried wounded over mountain passes, and negotiated ceasefires between warring factions. He saved lives, thousands of miles from here. And yet it was this diner, Corday turned, looking straight at Emily, that gave him a reason to keep living in the end. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a blue and gold Navy commendation coin, placed it reverently beside the medal. This woman, he said, voice low but steady, did something most of us never learn in uniform. She saw what we've been trained to hide. She treated a soldier like a man. No ranks, no medals, just humanity. Emily blinked back tears. She wasn't the type to cry in public. But this moment, this wasn't just about Walter. It was about every soldier who walked invisible, about her husband, about people who gave everything and asked for nothing. Corday turned to her directly. The Department of Veterans Affairs has approved a grant in Walter's name. You will receive monthly support from the Walter Green Memorial Fund. Enough to keep your home, educate your children, and pay for health care. Fully covered. Gasps echoed around the room. A waitress dropped a fork. Emily just stood frozen, her whole world shifting in seconds. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't, Corday said gently. Just know this. Booth 3 isn't just a memorial. It's a lighthouse. For all of us. He stepped back, gave her a formal military salute, and one by one, every uniformed man and woman in the room did the same. Firefighters, paramedics, soldiers, veterans. They stood, straightened their backs, and saluted the woman who had served in a different kind of war, the daily one, the invisible one. Emily's knees buckled, but her pride held. I just gave him coffee, she said softly. No, the Admiral replied. You gave him peace. From that day forward, the diner changed. Veterans drove in from out of state just to sit in booth 3. People left mementos, dog tags, letters, challenge coins, folded flags. A couple proposed there. A soldier spent the last morning before deployment drinking coffee in Walter's seat, whispering thanks to a man he'd never met. Emily became more than a waitress. She became a living thread in the fabric of honor. Quiet, strong, stitched by unseen hands. And yet, she never once stopped saying the words. Every morning, without fail, after she laid the napkin down, poured the coffee, and let the booth rest for 20 minutes, she placed her hand gently on the edge of the chair and whispered, "See you tomorrow, sir." And somehow, it always felt like he heard her. Months passed. The plaque at booth 3 grew surrounded, not with dust, but with stories. A folded napkin from a widow whose husband had served in Korea. A child drawing of a man in uniform, and a lady holding a coffee pot. A tiny pair of boots left by a new mother whose deployed husband never met his son. They called it the Quiet Corner. It became more than a booth. It became sacred. Emily never sought fame, but recognition found her anyway. A local news story sparked a national segment. Letters poured in. Some from strangers who'd lost sons and daughters in uniform. Some from soldiers who'd never been thanked for their service. They called her the patron saint of ordinary kindness. She kept working. She didn't move out of her home, even when she could afford a bigger one. She said it still smelled like Mark when the heat came on. Her children flourished. Her daughter earned a scholarship named after Walter Green, and her son, after visiting Arlington and seeing Walter's name etched in the marble, announced he wanted to join the Navy when he turned 18. Every Monday morning, before the diner opened, Emily unlocked the front door alone. She didn't turn on the lights right away. Just walked to booth 3, set down the plate, 2 eggs over easy toast black coffee, and sat across from the empty chair for 20 minutes. She never touched the food, but she always left something new beside the photo. A pressed flower from her daughter, a ribbon from her son's middle school track meet. Once even the bill, exactly $13.50, with a $5 tip folded beneath the napkin. No one sat there unless invited, not even on Veterans Day, not even on her day off, because Emily knew that seat didn't belong to the past. It belonged to everything we quietly hope for in the world: loyalty, honor, and invisible ways one soul can rescue another. As long as that chair was set, Walter was never truly gone. And every time someone paused at that booth, placed their hand on the table, and whispered, "Thank you," it was a promise that his story and hers would never be forgotten. And that maybe, just maybe, kindness could be enough to keep someone alive until tomorrow.